Burnout is almost always misdiagnosed. When someone hits burnout, the immediate assumption by others, and often by themselves, is that something has gone wrong internally. Motivation must be fading. Discipline must be slipping. Purpose must be unclear. Something psychological needs fixing. So the search begins. New goals, new strategies, new inspiration, more reminders of why this should matter. But that entire response is built on a false premise. Burnout is not a motivation problem. In fact, most people who experience burnout are not unmotivated at all. They are often highly driven, highly responsible, deeply invested. They care, they push, they persist, they override. And that's precisely the issue. The cultural story says burnout happens when people don't try hard enough, don't care enough, or aren't aligned enough with their purpose. But when you look closely, burnout tends to appear in people who have been trying for a long time, carrying pressure, managing responsibility, and staying mobilized well past what their system can sustainably hold. So, what's being missed? Burnout is a nervous system signal, not a character flaw. The body doesn't experience life in terms of motivation or meaning. It experiences life in terms of load, demand, recovery, and safety. It tracks how much activation is required, how long that activation is maintained, and whether there's enough downshift to restore balance. When that balance is lost, the nervous system doesn't send a polite message. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't ask for better mindset work. It withdraws support. Energy drops. Focus collapses. Interest fades. Drive disappears. And because we've been taught to interpret these signals psychologically, we assume something is wrong with us. We think we need to push through, fix ourselves, or get back to who we used to be. But what if burnout isn't a loss of motivation? What if it's the body saying very clearly, this level of demand is no longer viable? When burnout is misdiagnosed, people keep trying to solve it at the level of will. Why can't I do what I used to do? Why don't I feel driven anymore? Why is everything harder now? These questions make sense only if you believe the problem lives in your mind. But if burnout is a nervous system limit, then these questions are misdiagnosed. The system is no longer capable of mobilizing in the same way, and that matters. This isn't failure. It isn't weakness. And it isn't a lack of desire. It's a system that has reached the edge of its capacity and is doing exactly what nervous systems are designed to do when limits are crossed. Before anything can change, what's needed first isn't motivation, but accurate orientation. To understand burnout properly, you have to understand something fundamental about the nervous system. The body will support effort, sometimes extraordinary effort, for a long time. It will mobilize energy, sharpen focus, suppress signals of fatigue, delay rest, override discomfort, especially when responsibility is high, when stakes feel real, when identity is tied to performance. This is why burnout so often surprises people. They assume that if the body kept going yesterday, it should be able to keep going tomorrow. They expect continuity. They expect effort to scale linearly. But nervous systems don't work that way. There's a difference between mobilization and capacity. Mobilization is the ability to generate energy in the moment. Capacity is the system's ability to sustain that energy over time without injury or collapse. You can mobilize far beyond your sustainable capacity, especially when stress hormones are high, recovery is delayed, and rest is treated as optional. Eventually, the system reaches a threshold. And when it does, it doesn't fail gradually. It refuses. This is the part that gets misunderstood. Burnout isn't the body breaking down because it's weak. It's the body stepping in because further override would be damaging. The nervous system has one primary job: survival. Not productivity, not achievement, not meaning-making, survival. When continued effort is interpreted as a threat, the system intervenes. Energy doesn't just drop, it becomes unavailable. Motivation doesn't just fade, it stops registering. Tasks don't just feel hard, they feel impossible. This isn't laziness. It isn't resistance. And it isn't self-sabotage. It's protective withdrawal. The body is essentially saying, I will not provide the fuel for this pattern anymore. And from the inside, this can feel terrifying. People say, I know what I should do, but I can't make myself do it. I care, but I feel empty. I want things again. These statements reveal the split. The mind still wants to move forward, but the nervous system has disengaged from the contract. This is where the idea of override becomes critical. Override is when willpower attempts to bypass bodily limits. And for a while, override works. It creates results. It creates momentum. It reinforces identity. But override has a cost. The longer override is used as a baseline strategy, the more extreme the body's response needs to be to stop it. Subtle signals get ignored. Fatigue gets normalized. Tension gets justified. Until the only remaining option is shut down. Burnout is not the body giving up. It's the body drawing a line that was crossed too many times. When this is seen clearly, something important shifts. Burnout stops being interpreted as a personal deficiency and starts being recognized as a boundary enforcement mechanism. Nothing has gone wrong. The body is simply no longer willing to be overridden. And that refusal is not the end of capacity. It's the beginning of a different relationship with it.
Once burnout is misread as a motivation problem, a predictable response follows. People push. They double down on discipline. They look for stronger reasons. They add structure, pressure, accountability, urgency. They tell themselves they just need to get through this phase. And at first, this can work. A good day, a brief surge, a moment where things almost feel normal again. But underneath, something else is happening. When a nervous system has already withdrawn support, pushing doesn't restore capacity. It increases threat. From the body's perspective, continued demand without recovery signals danger. The system isn't evaluating whether a task is meaningful or worthwhile. It's evaluating whether further mobilization would compromise safety. So when you push, the body doesn't respond with cooperation. It responds with resistance, not emotional resistance. Physiological resistance. Focus fragments. Energy leaks. Simple tasks require disproportionate effort. The system tightens instead of opening. This is why strategies that once worked suddenly fail. Not because the strategies are bad, but because they require capacity the system no longer has access to. The more pressure is applied, the more the nervous system braces. And bracing reduces flexibility. It narrows attention. It increases internal friction. What used to feel like determination starts to feel like dragging yourself through molasses. This is where the spiral often begins. Because pushing doesn't work, people assume they're doing it wrong. So they push harder. They judge themselves more harshly. They question their character. They search for the missing piece that will unlock momentum again. But from a somatic perspective, this is the exact opposite of what's needed. Burnout isn't resolved by adding force to a system that's already overloaded. Force is what triggered the shutdown in the first place. What looks like lack of motivation is actually a lack of available energy. What looks like procrastination is actually conservation. What looks like avoidance is often protection. When these signals are ignored, the nervous system escalates its response. Symptoms become stronger. Recovery takes longer. Even small demands can feel overwhelming. This isn't because the system is fragile. It's because it's trying to prevent further harm. The paradox is that the behaviors meant to fix burnout, pushing, forcing, overriding, are the behaviors that deepen it. Each attempt to get back on track reinforces the sense that demands are non-negotiable. And when demands feel non-negotiable, the body has only one option left: withdrawal. This is why burnout doesn't improve through inspiration alone. You can understand your purpose perfectly and still be unable to move. You can want something deeply and still feel blocked. The blockage isn't psychological, it's regulatory. Until the nervous system perceives safety, effort will continue to backfire. Progress will feel forced. Momentum will remain unstable. Burnout isn't asking you to try harder. It's asking you to stop treating pressure as a solution. Because the way forward doesn't come from more force, it comes from restoring the conditions under which effort becomes possible again. By the time someone reaches burnout, collapse is often already underway. Energy has dropped. Motivation has faded. Engagement feels distant. The future feels heavy or blank. And culturally, collapse is treated as failure. It's framed as falling behind, losing momentum, or breaking down, something to recover from quickly so life can resume normally. But from a nervous system perspective, collapse isn't a mistake. It's information. Collapse is what happens when the system decides that continued effort would be more costly than stopping. It's not the absence of intelligence, it's intelligence intervening. The body has a remarkable ability to assess long-term viability. It tracks not just today's demands, but patterns over time. When pressure remains high and recovery remains insufficient, the system recalibrates by reducing output. This is not punishment, it's preservation. Seen this way, collapse is not the enemy. It's the clearest signal the system has left. Subtle messages were likely sent earlier: fatigue, irritability, diminished joy, increased effort for the same results. When those weren't heeded, the message had to get louder. Burnout is that louder message. Reframing collapse as intelligence changes the internal dialogue. Instead of asking, "How do I get myself back?" the orientation becomes, "What is the system responding to?" That question doesn't demand immediate action. It doesn't require solutions. It invites listening. And this is where real recovery begins. Not with motivation, but with respect. Respect for limits. Respect for timing. Respect for the body's role in sustaining life, not just producing outcomes. Collapse doesn't mean you're done. It means the old way of engaging is done. Many people fear that if they stop pushing, they'll never start again. But that fear comes from equating force with forward movement. In reality, sustainable engagement only returns when the system feels safe enough to offer energy voluntarily. Effort that arises from safety feels different. It doesn't require constant override. It doesn't feel brittle or draining. It's quieter, steadier, more responsive. But that kind of effort can't be commanded. It has to be allowed. Burnout marks a transition point. It's the moment the nervous system insists on a new relationship to effort, responsibility, and pacing. Not less care, but different care. Not disengagement, but recalibration. When collapse is treated as intelligence rather than failure, something softens. The urgency to fix disappears. The need to prove relaxes. The system begins to register that it's being listened to rather than overridden. And that listening is not passive. It's the most accurate form of orientation there is. From this place, recovery isn't about getting back to who you were. It's about discovering how to move forward without betraying the limits that keep you alive. Burnout is not the end of your capacity. It's the body protecting the possibility of one that actually lasts.